we're going to be talking about spring in the English classroom. Hopefully, you're feeling the weather changing a little bit where you are, and we're going to be talking about some sort of things, activities you can do in class about spring. The chat is open, so if you've got any comments or questions, put them in there. Felicity's monitoring it, and we can answer them in the webinar. Everyone attending the webinar will receive a certificate of participation and a webinar handout. It will be sent out tomorrow or at the latest Monday. If you don't receive it, check in your spam. And then if you don't get it, write to me at Formazione. I know we have a few people who are not receiving them, so let me know. I always get them out to you quite quickly. The handout will contain all the information from the webinar, plus a lot more. We've got a few worksheets and some useful links in this week. And remember that on the webinar handout, there is a link to our YouTube page where you can see all the webinars that you may have missed or that you want to watch again. Anyway, on the theme of spring, spring, as obviously, brings new life and looks forward to summer. Even though it comes towards the end of the European academic year, it should emphasize to students that it's never too late for a new start. Perhaps more than any other season, spring makes us look at the outside world, focusing minds on environment and nature. So we always have some objectives, and so by the end of this session, I hope you'll be better able to integrate these sort of spring-themed expressions seamlessly into your lesson plans. You should be able to design some engaging creative writing activities inspired by spring. We've got some great ideas with haikus. And as usual with these sort of theme webinars, we have some literature as well. So I've got some things about spring there, particularly because April is National, or I think International Poetry Month. And you'll see why they chose April in when we get to that part. Anyway, first up, we've got some spring phrasal verbs. Not all of these are necessarily related to spring, the season, but also spring has a couple of other meanings in English, as you'll see. This is part of the video. So I've given you in the handout the link to the full video, but we'll have a look at some of it. And as I said, it sort of refers to the also the noun, the adjective, verb, spring. Let us know in the chat too if you're familiar with any phrasal verbs that have the word spring in them. Okay. In this, we have to spring for something, to spring something on someone. Let's have a look and we'll find out what these expressions mean.
So let's begin with our first phrasal verb, which is to spring for something. And what it means, if somebody springs for something, it means that they pay for something, often unexpectedly and typically generously for someone else. And the one thing I'll say about this phrasal verb is that you're likely to hear people use it in the past tense to refer to something that they bought. So I could say, surprisingly, the boss sprang for everyone's lunch, that it was unexpected and it was also generous. Or maybe I go travel with a friend and I could say, my friend sprang for the flights, the hotel, and all the food. It was very generous of them to pay for this, to spring for something.
No, I think she's going to want to do these together. You know, she sprang for some champagne.
More importantly, this is a fancy outfit, all right? I sprang for the 3-button jacket. It was $8 extra.
The next phrasal verb is to spring on. And the way that you would use this is you're going to spring something on someone. And what this phrasal verb means is to suddenly ask or tell someone something that they just do not expect. And you may often hear people apologize and then use this phrasal verb, and they may say something like, hey, sorry to spring this on you, but, and then they would suddenly tell you something that you just don't expect. Like, Sorry to spring this on you, but can you work over the weekend? And it's probably not something you want to do. And then you could respond and say, hey, how could you spring this on me at the last minute? And you may hear people use it with that question as well, or say, how could you spring this on me at the last second and suddenly ask or tell me this thing?
I'm very sorry to spring this on you, but it's incredibly urgent.
Are these divorce papers?
Sorry to spring this on you, but I didn't think it would be a problem.
So there we have some phrasal verbs that maybe you weren't aware of, and notice that both of those have sort of some sense of unexpected things happening. I think that's sort of because spring often has this meaning of like a sudden movement. Okay, so I think that's where those come from, not necessarily in the sense of spring the season, but a good opportunity to bring in some phrasal verbs into your lesson. As I said, the full video also talks about a few others. I didn't want to waste too much of the webinar looking at that when you can look at that in your own time. Anyway, there are also some interesting idioms with the word spring, or not necessarily the word spring, but with a spring theme. Be careful, not all of them, as previously, use spring in the sense of the season, but also that sort of sense of to leap, jump quickly. Okay. One is I'm no spring chicken, and I'm going to give you some different meanings, and this, as in the handout, you might be able to see that you can play this game where students have to guess the definition. So we have 3 definitions there, and let us know in the chat, A, B, or C, which one you think is correct. So A, does it mean I am still young and experienced? Or B, I'm not as young as I used to be? Or C, I am very energetic and lively? Let us know in the chat there. I'll go on to the next one. We have let's make hay while the sun shines, so something that could be happening in spring. Does it mean A, let's take a break while we can? Let's relax and enjoy the good weather? Or C, let's take advantage of a good opportunity? Okay, so let us know which one for spring chicken and which one with make hay while the sun shines. I hope you guessed B. So I'm no spring chicken generally has this meaning of I'm not as young as I used to be. When someone sort of maybe, I don't know, invites you or invites me more likely to something that is maybe something a bit young for them, or physical activity that might not be quite as easy when you're my age. And for let's make hay while the sun shines, or we generally have this, let's take advantage of a good opportunity. So make the most of something that's happening. Obviously, this sort of seasonal thing, when the sun shines, a good time to get the hay in order. Attached to the handout will be this worksheet, and you can use it with your students. There is also a answer copy there too, so you can print out both, one for you and as many as you want for the students, or even do it in a digital format if you don't want to waste paper. And you can have a look at these other ones, which include the early bird catches the worm, to turn over a new leaf, or just to turn a new leaf, and nothing springs to mind. So some great idioms that you can use with your students there, printable. Another activity that you could do with your students is a spring haiku. Now, the haiku, as you may know, is a traditional form of Japanese poetry that consists of 3 lines in a specific syllable pattern. Obviously, syllables in Japanese are obviously a little bit different to English, but generally works in the sense that there's 5 syllables in the first line, 7 in the second, and 5 in the third. A fundamental aspect of this haiku is the inclusion of a kigo. I'm no Japanese speaker, so I hope I'm getting close to it, which is the word or phrase that signifies the season. And so this could be any season, not just spring, but obviously spring is a very evocative season that you could apply to it. And a lot of the famous haikus do refer to spring. This element helps to ground the poem in a specific time of year and evokes these sort of feelings and imagery. As you can see, these cherry blossoms are a very common spring gigo. Probably the most famous haiku is one by the Japanese master Matsuo Basho. Um, and that is, well, I'm not going to attempt it in Japanese, but a literal translation would be an ancient pond, a frog jumps in, the splash of water. With a bit of information, some people have translated it to make it fit into English syllables, obviously elaborating on it a little bit because, to maybe introduce some other things. An old silent pond, a frog jumps into the pond, splash, silence again. So there we have again the 5-7-5 syllable pattern. What you could do is get your students to write haikus. These are quite a simple, like poem to start with. It doesn't need to have rhymes. It has these syllables that, again, you can get the students to stick to those syllables. I think it's really the only rule you have to have, as well as this kigo. This can be a really good activity to get students thinking about syllables and pronunciation so that they can count the syllables. And this is something sometimes one of the errors the students have when they're speaking in English is sounding out all of the vowels, or even sounding out some consonants that are silent, or vowels that become diphthongs. So what you could do is explain this haiku form. The most important things, obviously, that it's 3 lines, that it has 5 and then 7 and then 5 syllables, and that they need to put in this seasonal word. Again, it doesn't necessarily have to be the name of a season, but something that evokes which season it's placed in. Look at some famous haikus. You could very easily have a look. There's a lot of web pages devoted to haikus. They could be both translated into English or those written by English poets. It is a form, one of the most important forms brought in from Japanese that has become part of English poetry, I guess, now. Brainstorm sensory words, so sounds, smells, sights related to spring. Again, if you wanted to adapt this to other seasons, it could work just as well. And individually, the students write the haiku while the teacher goes around and checks, maybe counting the syllables, checking with them, making sure they're putting in their seasonal word, and correcting certain parts. Students could pair up and check each other's haiku. I always think peer correction's a really good idea to get students involved and take a little bit of responsibility. Sometimes they can spot things in other people's work that they can't really spot in their own. And again, pay attention to this syllable count can really help students work on syllables, which can really pay off later down the track when they're working out sentence stress and things like this. And then they can obviously read their haiku to the class. I guess you could always have a vote on which ones were the favorites. Here's one that I thought was quite good by the African-American writer Richard Wright, which is Whitecaps on the Bay, a broken signboard banging in the April wind. Anyway, that brings us to the final part of our webinar, which is on National Poetry Month, which is April. So we always try to make these webinars anticipate the event they're going to be talking about. So we've given you plenty of time to organise a lesson around Poetry Month. And since 1996, it has officially been the National Poetry Month, according to the Academy of American Poets. And if you go to poets.org, you can find many poems. It's a big repository of poems that you can download. You can look at other resources that you can use to teach poetry. So it has a lot of guides. So if you have to teach literature in the last couple of years of high school in Italy or wherever you are, it can be a really good way to get some resources to help you teach this lesson plan, sometimes analysis, fun activities around that. Why April? Well, there are two masterpieces of English language poetry that have April in their first lines. Let us know if you know where these first lines come from. I'm not going to try to pronounce the Middle English there, but it sort of translates to when April with its sweet smelling showers. Middle English might give you a bit of a clue what sort of who we're talking about. I don't know, Felicity, has anyone guessed in the chat there?
Yeah, a lot of people said Chaucer.
Very good. Whoever put Chaucer is correct there. And the second one is April is the cruelest month, breeding. Now, be careful, breeding is sort of running on to the next line, but the poet here has sort of quite unusual line endings.
And again, we've got a few people guessing the right answer here. T.S. Eliot.
T.S. Eliot, very good. Yes. The first, as I'm sure a lot of people guessed, is Chaucer's general prologue to the Canterbury Tales. So the sort of introduction to the Canterbury Tales, written around 1400. And then the second is the first line from T.S. Eliot's 20th century masterpiece, The Waste Land, from just over a century ago. It's generally acknowledged, although not necessarily confirmed by Eliot, but it's generally seen to be that the use of April in the poem seems to be a deliberate allusion to Chaucer's poem. Let's have a look at these two poems together. So the general prologue, here we have it, and this is a translation into modern English. Obviously, it was written in Middle English, but Middle English, you can actually go to YouTube and find some pronunciations of the poem in Middle English, but it does sound quite different, and there's a lot of differences. So here we have a sort of free translation or literal translation. So we have, when April with its sweet smelling showers has pierced the drought of March to the root, and bathed every vein of the plants in such liquid by which flower the flower is created. When the west wind also with its sweet breath in every wood and field has breathed life to the tender new leaves, and the young sun has run half its course in Aries, and small fowls make melody, those that sleep all night with open eyes, so nature incites them in their hearts. Then folk long to go on pilgrimages, and professional pilgrims seek foreign shores, to distant shrines, known in various lands, and specially from every shire's end of England to Canterbury they travel, to seek the holy blessed martyr who helped them when they were sick. So, excuse me a moment. Sorry about that. Anyway, Chaucer begins by evoking this theme of rebirth after a hard winter. Obviously, in medieval England, winter was a dangerous time, a time of scarce food, cold weather, and illness. So the coming of spring was an event to be celebrated. And one way of celebrating and giving thanks at the same time was to go on a pilgrimage, ideally, and this is where they are going in the Canterbury Tales, to the shrine of St. Thomas Becket, the Archbishop of Canterbury, who was martyred in 1170. Again, this is something that is often studied in English history and as this relation to the Canterbury Tales, because they're all going there to give thanks to the saint for getting them through the winter. In that time, a pilgrimage was not just a religious practice, although it was certainly that. It was also an early form of a holiday, or an excuse to allow you to get away, to people from different classes to socialize together. And it's a perfect narrative device for Chaucer to be able to show people from all classes, except the noble classes who wouldn't travel with the lower classes, and the peasant class who wouldn't be able to leave their place of residence. Anyway, next we look at Eliot's The Waste Land, and here we have a lot of sort of languages mixing together here, although not so many maybe in this part. I think we just have a little bit of German here. But throughout the poem, I think there's like up to about 10 languages, if not more, throughout there, including ancient languages, even in Greek, Latin, and Sanskrit, I think it ends with as well. Anyway, let's have a listen.
April is the cruelest month, breeding.
This is, by the way, if it sounds a bit strange, it is T.S. Eliot himself reading it. Okay, he's got quite a bit of a strange way of reading, but interesting. It's on YouTube too, so I've included that link. You can actually listen to the whole part of it there. Anyway, let's hear that again.
April is the cruelest month, breeding lilacs out of the dead land, mixing memory and desire, stirring dull roots with spring rain. Winter kept us warm, covering earth in forgetful snow, feeding a little life with dried tubers. Summer surprised us, coming over the Starnberger See with a shower of rain. We stopped in the colonnade and went on in sunlight into the Hofgarten and drank coffee and talked for an hour. Bin gar keine Russin, stamm aus Litauen, echt Deutsch. And when we were children, staying at the Archduke's, my cousin's, he took me out on a sled and I was frightened. He said, Marie, Marie, hold on tight. And down we went. In the mountains, there you feel free. I read much of the night and go south in the winter.
Again, here we just have the beginning. It's the beginning of the first part. So the actual poem would go on for about probably at least 20 minutes or so if we were to read it all. But as you can see, Eliot takes a much darker view of April. The very appearance of life and procreation disgusts the narrator. So it's a very different sort of point of view, contrast to Chaucer's view. He says, winter kept us numb, but in Eliot's aesthetic view, spring's stirring of desire brings painful memories and lust. Wasteland is above all a poem of fragments. So it comes from different speakers through which modern cosmopolitan life, which he refers to many different cities, whether it's in here we have Lithuania, and then also there's references to Vienna, London. Well, it's particularly set in London. And different, it's sort of contrasted to the unity of medieval or classical civilization, where he's often contrasting these with like old characters from ancient literature put into the modern times. The eighth line, summer surprises, another speaker enters. This is some Lithuanian German aristocrat called Marie, whose cosmopolitanism symbolizes the disconnection and rootlessness of modern life, at least for Eliot here. So within just the first lines of the poem, we've passed through 3 of the 4 seasons. In fact, only autumn is one of them that remains unnamed there. Like the Canterbury Tales, the Wasteland is populated by characters who speak in their own voice. However, unlike Chaucer's poem, Eliot's speakers come in and leave without really announcing themselves. They often even return later in different parts. It is really a load of fragments put together. I know that he wrote out a really long poem, and then his friend and as it was, editor Ezra Pound came and cut it down and juxtaposed particular parts. Anyway, coming to a conclusion, we do have some other spring festivals around the world that your students may wish to investigate in class. They are Holi, so in India and Nepal, it's known as the Festival of Colours. We have cherry blossom festivals in Japan. We have obviously May Day in Europe and known as International Workers' Day. And not to be forgotten, April Fool's Day on the 1st of April when we play tricks on people. Some other literature that might be relevant to the theme of spring is William Wordsworth, who obviously, as an English romantic poet, possibly the greatest, wrote several poems about nature. Particularly many poems about nature, but particularly some in spring. So lines written in early spring, I wandered lonely as a cloud. often known as daffodils, amongst others. Anyway, coming to an end, let us know in the chat, or you're welcome to put it in the survey that you'll complete after the webinar's finished, or we'd like you to complete. Let us know about ideas for future webinars. We're always open to those. Thank you a lot for your attention and for your comments in the chat. You will receive a certificate of participation by email tomorrow. Let me know at Formazione at MLA World if you don't receive it. I'll get that out to you as soon as possible. And with that will be a handout containing all the links to things you've seen in there or heard in there, and a lot more. Also, the handout, the worksheet there that you can use in your classes. We're going to have another themed webinar next week, and that will be on Easter in the English classroom. We're going to look at some literature there too. So, and obviously some activities that you can do related to Easter. Thank you, Felicity, for helping me with the webinar, and thanks to all the participants there. Okay. Hope to see you next week.
Thanks, Josh.
Bye, everyone.